sir, could you tell us where to find him?
That's him up there. Coming in now.
Okay, Chief. Excuse me, sir. Kit Wilkins, sir.
Cadet Thompson, sir. We were told to report to you.
Oh, good morning. Glad to know you. You men all checked in?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any free time right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll stow this gear and meet you in the ready room in 10 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Say, that's Bob Taylor. I've seen him in pictures.
You won't have to worry about that when you get to sea stage.
You sure gave it the works up there, sir. You suppose we'll ever be able to do that, sir?
Oh, sure you will. I know how you feel. I remember how I felt when I was right where you fellas are, just starting primary training. Hasn't been too long ago, either. Yeah, I know how it is. You joined the Navy because you wanted to fly. But instead of flying, pretty soon you found yourself doing things that didn't seem to have any connection with flying. What you didn't realize was that the obstacle course, for example, had been carefully planned to increase your agility. Just as the hours of boxing and wrestling you put in gave you an aggressiveness that every Navy pilot must have. You probably couldn't see what swimming had to do with flying. Being able to swim might someday save your life. Marching was just a preliminary to the air discipline you would ultimately experience in formation flying. Then, for recreation, you'd hike 15 or 20 miles. Plenty tough going, you thought, but being able to take it in stride might someday mean your survival after a jungle crack-up. You studied bed making, mathematics, recognition, a lot of other things. There are good reasons for all of them. Perhaps the most important is the fact that the foundation of every naval officer is physical fitness.
You have a good memory, sir. Is it really pretty tough, this primary training?
Well, if you mean does it take hard work, yes. But if you mean is flying itself tough, no. When you get the right approach, flying is relatively simple. Because the airplane is of value only as a platform. Some are platforms for guns. Some are platforms for bombs, for depth charges, or torpedoes. Some carry men and equipment. Some are for observation. Just as a battleship is merely a convenient floating platform, so the airplane is a convenient airborne platform. Take the carrier pilot, for instance. Flying's only a small part of his job. He has to get his plane safely to his objective. To do this, he has to navigate correctly. And even if he's pretty good at it, that's almost a full-time job in itself. He must stand a 360-degree watch at all times. An enemy plane may shoot him down before he even sees it. He must watch the ocean for enemy ships. When he reaches his objective, he must deliver his blow at the enemy and at the same time keep himself and his plane from being shot up. Get back safely, perhaps all alone. He must backtrack on his own navigation, aiming at a tiny moving speck in thousands of miles of open ocean. There isn't enough gas for second guessing. All the while, he must be on the alert for attacking enemy planes.
But what I've always wondered is, how can he do all that and fly the plane too?
Because the combat pilot handles the mechanics of flying as easily and as naturally as you handle the mechanics of walking. His senses are so keenly developed and so attuned to the airplane that he can fly with 90% of his attention on something else, still know exactly what his plane's doing all the time. That's what the cadet has to learn to do before he can become a combat pilot.
Look at those F-6F.
That's for me. Primary training, you don't just learn to fly yellow perils. You learn to fly airplanes. Any and everything with wings on it. Because when you can fly the yellow peril and fly it well, any other plane is just another kite. The operational planes just have more gadgets with which you have to be familiar. As far as the actual flying goes, the only difference is that the big planes go faster and weigh more. Of course, you fellows probably think of flying as something entirely strange and new. But actually, you've been learning to fly ever since you started learning to walk. Ever notice how babies learn to walk? First, they get interested in their feet, in the mechanics of walking. They don't make much progress. Then one day they get the complete picture of where they are and where they want to go. They forget all about their feet and really walk. Because they forget about the mechanics of walking and put their minds on the ultimate objective. You were learning to fly when you first learned to ride a scooter. Maybe you didn't know enough to bank the first time you went around a corner, so you fell over on the outside of the curve. Or maybe you banked it too much and fell off on the inside. But after a while, you got so that you could tell by the feel of it whether you were banking right. Well, in flying an airplane, you use that same sense of balance you learned from riding the scooter. You were learning to fly when you learned to ride a bicycle. You added to that sense of balance, of the right feel of the thing when you banked for a turn. You rode with other fellows, maybe. That was formation riding. Not too different from formation flying. If you rode enough, you got the feel of your bicycle so it was almost a part of you. Like most fellows, you probably drive a car. But can you think back to the day when you first started to learn to drive? Remember how hard it seemed? You wondered if you'd ever be able to jump into the car and drive like the kid next door. You had trouble remembering which gear was which, occasionally with almost disastrous results. In a surprisingly short time, you forgot all about the gear shift and the steering wheel, and which pedal was the clutch and which the brake. And as the business of driving became more and more automatic, it was possible to devote most of your attention to matters much more important than the mere mechanics of operating the car. By now, you really had the feel of it. Yes, you've been learning to fly all your life because flying isn't so different from the things you're used to. If it were, how could the Wright brothers have flown in the first place? Matter of fact, they probably didn't know as much about flying as you fellows do right now. Essentially, there's not such a great difference between driving an automobile and flying a plane. When you're driving a car, you can see ahead of you the road you're going to travel. All you have to do is to follow it. In flying a plane, there is no path for you to follow. Don't let that worry you. You'll soon learn to create that path in your mind, so you see it as clearly in your imagination as you see the highway ahead when you're traveling in an automobile. No matter where you fly or what you want to make your airplane do, your mind will form that mental path ahead to take you safely past obstacles. That mental path will guide you through acrobatic maneuvers, bring you in for well-executed landings. It won't be long after you start your training that you begin thinking ahead. So your path is always out there, planned, well in advance of your plane.
You mean you get so you can actually visualize the road up there ahead of you?
Yeah, that's what it amounts to. There's nothing so unusual about it. It works on the ground, too. You probably know people who never could learn to park in a tight space. Somebody told them that if they'd start cutting the wheel at a certain spot and then cut it hard the other way and so on, they'd have no trouble. That'd be fine if all parking spaces were of a standard size. Unfortunately, they're not. If he would first look at the space and then visualize the path his car must take to get into that space, he'd have a much better chance of making it on the first try. Ever been to one of those motorcycle riding exhibitions they have at carnivals and fairs? Those fellows have to visualize an exact path if they want to go on living. As a matter of fact, they can give you a pretty good exhibition of the wing over. That's one of the acrobatic maneuvers you'll be doing later on. For some reason, a lot of people have the idea that it takes a Superman to be a naval aviator.
Well, sir, can just anybody learn to fly?
Practically any normal person who has all these faculties and some good health. I don't care who you are or what you're doing things all your life that'll help you with your flying. Take stalls and spins, for instance. We've had students come in here with a deathly fear of them, whereas actually they're both perfectly safe and simple maneuvers. You just don't want to run into the ground while executing them. As a matter of fact, you're already familiar with some of the symptoms of a stall. You learned about them from your bicycle. When you start up a grade on your bicycle, if you don't pedal, you lose speed. You see the bicycle's going slower. The wind whistling past your ears quiets down. Pretty soon the bicycle gets wobbly, then stalls, falls over. Same way with an airplane. Pull up into the climbing attitude, and unless you add power, your speed will fall off. If you keep the nose in that climbing attitude, you'll soon begin to sense the same stalling conditions you experienced with your bicycle. You can feel the airplane getting ready to stall. The controls get slack and mushy, don't respond as quickly. The bicycle wobbles, the plane vibrates. Then it stalls, drops off on a wing. In certain cases, it may spin. Of course, one of the best ways to avoid an impending stall in an airplane is to get the nose down. Motorcycle riders use this technique, too. If they find they don't have enough speed to maintain their attitude, they put their nose down and pick up whatever speed they need.